We lived in Laie, Hawaii for 3 years, and we are lifelong supporters of BYU Hawaii. When we returned to this area, we lived in Provo for several years before settling permanently in Orem. Since my oldest was a kindergartner, I have been an active volunteer and accepted leadership positions in schools, in the PTAs and on school community council. And now with all 8 children successfully launched, right? I have enjoyed the opportunity to serve on the Alpine Board of Education for the last 4 years. I have current assignments on the Teaching and Learning Committee and the Policy Committee. And I have also served as a co-chair of the Advisory Board of the UVU School of Education and am a member of the Utah County chapter of Women United. I think I just also want to briefly tell you how it's been a wonderful experience through my 35 years of service to see the difference a person can make in a school. I think of Kathy Ambrose and her child that had allergies, and suddenly the whole school knew about allergies. Thank you.
I too want to just thank Emma and Debbie for their participation tonight, and thank you for attending. I think it's important to be engaged in the process. We submitted introductions, and I wrote it in the third person, so I thought somebody else would be reading this. But I am married to Stephanie, and Stephanie and I together have a Brady bunch of 9 kids and 2 granddaughters. I have 5 biological kids, and I value family, and I've invested time and money into my kids, and those investments of time and money have produced unique dividends, and I'm very proud of my kids. I've been working in Alpine School District for 25 years. I have taught financial literacy, which is my passion. For the first 10 years of my career, I taught English. I was an English education major at Brigham Young University, but I've also gone on to get, I tease that I'm not sure how smart this shows I am or how dumb it shows I am, but I ended up getting 2 master's degrees, one in educational leadership and one in educational counseling. So I've got a significant background in education. In Alpine School District, I've been a teacher, but I've also worked as an athletic director, a teacher on administrative assignment, which means I fill the role of an administrator, and a wrestling and baseball coach. So I have the unique privilege of not just being a school teacher, but I run a business on the side, and so I think that allows me the opportunity to kind of have a perspective of both the classroom, education, as well as business, and I think that balance kind of helps bring a unique perspective to the board. So, thank you.
We will start with you. The first question that was submitted: describe the Alpine vision for learning. Do you agree with it? How would you impact improving academic performance as a board member? Describe the Alpine vision of learning. Do you agree with it? How would you impact not sure that's written right. How would your impact improving academic performance as a board member? How would you improve the academic performance? I'm just going to say it that way.
Thank you. The Alpine District Vision for Learning is one that I support wholeheartedly. At the center of it is student learning. And we want to make sure that our students are learning content, but also learning skills that, for example, employers would need, like creativity, collaboration, communication. And the third part of it is that our students are learning character and citizenship. So I love the well-rounded picture of what we're trying to do in Alpine School District. The other thing I really love about the Vision for Learning is that in Alpine School District, your chances of getting a good teacher should not be the luck of the draw. And that's because we have teacher teams organized in what we call professional learning communities. They work collaboratively together. They help each other improve. They look at all their students together. They look at data, and they look at how can I teach better, best practices. So that's what I love about the PLC process. Within that, they also have what's called a return on instruction, or return on, if they have a tier 2, which is a second method of teaching, and remediation. They also say, okay, this student did not learn the material, but what about the student that knows the material already? And there needs to be a plan also for that student. So there's a lot of differentiated teaching in Alpine School District. We don't treat all students as if they're the same. We recognize that there are different needs. And I'm just so impressed with many of our teacher teams that are knocking this out of the park. They are moving kids forward. Especially, I look at our ELL students, or English language learners. In Sharon Elementary and in Parkside Elementary, they are leading the district in growth per student, academic achievement from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And that's because they have in place the ELL coaches, the ESL, or English as a Second Language, coordinators, and instructors that support them. And they are really moving those kids along, and I appreciate and celebrate the success of our teacher teams. Thank you.
Paul, do you want me to repeat the question, or do you describe the Alpine vision for learning? Do you agree with it? And how would you improve academic performance as a board member?
I'm a storyteller, and my wife teased me about being careful about telling too many stories, but I think this is an important opportunity to really kind of illustrate something. As I mentioned before, I'm going to specifically talk about two kids, Abby and Zeke. Abby is a student of mine who, through her education process, excelled. She was a 4.0 student. She got accepted to BYU on her own merits, has excelled at BYU and is doing well as a student there. Then I had Zeke, and Zeke struggled through school. Zeke struggled with the academic learning throughout his education. But I want to talk about the different intelligences and the difference between Zeke and Abby. Zeke was able to rebuild on his own and through his own learning, rebuild 5 different motorcycles, rebuilt the engine, bought them with a broken engine, rebuilt the engine, and sold them and flipped those motorcycles. Now, the reason I tell you that story is because there are fads that come and go in education. And one of the fads that I've seen come and go when I was going to school is there's different ways students learn. There's intelligences. Okay? And when I went to school and got my education, we talked about 7 different intelligences. In the education system right now, we're teaching to about 2 of those intelligences. Okay? And there are 5 of those intelligences that we're missing. And so a student like my son Zeke, who is a kinesthetic learner and needs to be working with his hands and needs to be learning math in a different way, he's not having the opportunity to really learn the things that he needs to learn throughout the education process. I think we do many things great in Alpine School District, but education needs to be individual, and individual students need to have the opportunity to learn the way that they learn, rather than broad brush paint, this is how we're going to teach our students. And so individual learning, I think, is something that we can improve on. We can look for opportunities to take a student like Zeke and help him to enhance his intelligences and grow from the experiences that he's having. Thank you.
We have 1 minute if you'd like to respond.
As I said, whoops. said, Alpine School District teachers, I think, do a really good job of differentiating in their teaching and meeting those needs, the different ways that students learn. I also appreciate the opportunities they have in the CTE program, as well as online learning. One thing that I did not address was how a board member helps. I think we do better when we are observed. We do better when we're held accountable. We do better when we have the resources we need, and we do better when we celebrate success. All of those are things that I can do as a board member, and I plan to.
Cole, would you also like a minute to add or respond?
I think it's important. One of the big things, bringing the perspective of a classroom teacher to the classroom teacher is, I think, what's important. We can talk about platitudes and we can talk about ideas, but when you're in the trenches and actually engaged in the process of educating our kids, you have a ground level experience of knowing what's going on with those kids. And one of the things that I think we've got to recognize the art of teaching and try to allow teachers to be individuals in the classroom, allow them to teach to their strengths, and allow them to reach out to kids in a way that they can best educate those kids. And I think that through the process of what we're doing right now, we're streamlining education. We're treating it like it's Walmart instead of providing an individual education for each one of our children.
What current ASB policy do you think needs to be updated, changed, or eliminated? What current ASB policy do you think needs to be updated, changed, or eliminated? 2 minutes.
This is one that I've had in my back pocket for a long time. I mentioned it in debates in the past, but policy number 1312 is parent complaints. And I'm not going to read the policy to you, but here's what I am going to share with you. This policy was approved on December 10th of 1985. Okay? The last time this policy was reviewed was March of 2003. Okay? The last time that our board has addressed dealing with parent complaints was in March of 2003. A lot has changed since 2003, and this is one here that I think is very important in terms of recognizing, hey, that the parents have a voice, and the parents have an opportunity to share their insight and share their feedback with the administrators and with the teachers and with Alpine School District. And to not review this policy since 2003 is frustrating in the sense that it completely abandons the idea that parents can be involved in their kids' education and have the opportunity to reach out. So I think this policy is important. Another policy that I think is important, there's one organization that represents teachers, and only one, and it's written into policy. It says exclusive. Was that for me? And that policy, it says exclusive, and I think it's a shame that we give one organization exclusive representation for the voice of teachers. It's a monopoly. We all know that monopolies aren't good, so why do we allow that monopoly for the voice for educators to continue in education? Not only do we allow it to happen, we write it into policy that they have the right to exclusively negotiate and speak on behalf of all teachers. I know that organization doesn't represent me, hasn't represented me, and a lot of my peers feel like they're not being represented. And we need to bring more voices to the table that represent different points of view.
I do serve on the policy committee, and I have updated many policies in the last 4 years. There are over 400 policies in Alpine School District, which is typical for a school district. So as far as addressing all 400 of those, I would like to institute in Alpine School District a systematic way of reviewing policy that has not existed to this point. I did take a look at that policy, Cole, about parent complaints. This is called an umbrella policy. There are other policies that have specific ways that parents can challenge or issue a complaint that are written into other policies. This is called an umbrella policy that just blanketly states that we value the input of our parents and that we do want to hear from them. And that's the reason it's not an updated one, is because it's a blanket statement that doesn't require updating. Our other policies do. For example, we just addressed dress grooming standard, it's no longer called grooming. We don't say the word grooming anymore. We updated our dress standards on Tuesday night, and I invite you to take a look at that. The other issue, we talked about AEA. We have a very good relationship with the Alpine Educators Association. It is a common practice to exclusively deal with one employee or classified or certified employee organization. If you deal with multiples, they begin to compete with each other, and it's hard to negotiate. A three-way negotiation is very difficult, and that's why in our policy we only negotiate with the one representing the most people. And Cole and my opponent is free to advocate for an alternate representative organization. That is his right. But to this point, we have really very good relationships with our employee organization. And they actually sang us a song at board meeting, and the song goes, "Thank you for being a friend." We have enjoyed that great relationship. Where am I? Okay.
Cole, you have 1 minute to either add or rebut. 1 minute.
A blanket policy that was written in 1985 and reviewed in March of 2003. It was reviewed in 2003, but it's not important anymore to review. This is not a policy that needs to be reviewed. This is about parent complaints, okay? If you're not aware of the situation that's happening right now at Mountain View High School with the Office of Civil Rights and the case that they have against Alpine School District, you would understand why this policy right here is so important. Had a more clear explanation of how to deal with parent complaints been established by Alpine School District, I am confident that that situation would not be at the level that it's at, where the Office of Civil Rights is investigating Mountain View High School. If we would have dealt with that on a level, a district level, we would not be having an investigation by the Office of Civil Rights.
Would you like to give another minute for the same question to either add or rebut?
I am not going to address the details of a civil rights suit. I do know that there is policy in place for how those should be handled, and there are policies and procedures for challenging if you think that those have not been followed. And I absolutely support parents in their right to report things that are not appropriate, that they see happening, and I totally am supportive of that. As a board member, it is not my role to be embroiled in the situation, because sometimes the board member is called upon in the in the final appeal to make the decision, the final decision. And so in order to make a unbiased opinion, that board member has to recuse him or herself. Thank you.
Maybe you can stay there. This question, we'll start with you. What strengths and experience do you bring to serving on the Alpine Board? Strengths and experience do you bring?
Thank you. I guess I would start with the fact that I have 8 children. And I have been, as I said earlier, involved from day one in some form or another. Those children have not all been the cookie cutters, as you know. They each have different needs in education, different interests. And so I've run the gamut as far as the type of students anyway, they are all different. As far as my qualifications, I think one of the things that I really excel at and I truly enjoy is helping people find their strength and what they can offer in a public school setting. As I look at my years of service, there were times when I had a roster to fill, and I did fill that because I was unafraid to call people and say, we need you. And we understand you have this strength. And this is what we would like you to do. And people invariably have said yes. And so I feel like I'm a builder of schools as I help build community engagement. I was a PTA president at Orem Elementary when Noah Webster, a charter school, opened. And this was kind of a shock to our little school community because suddenly neighbors were going to different schools and it was difficult. And in that environment, I wanted to create community in our school and create a sense of belonging and contributing. And so I organized what we called an Orem Elementary Beautification Day, in which we all gathered and made our school look better and made it more beautiful. I also helped that school be involved in choosing its own math curriculum. We set aside a night when everyone could come and look at their curriculum. So I feel like I'm a good person for involving the community and building relationships of trust through good communication and through following through on what we say we're going to do. So that's my strength. Thanks.
Same question to you, Paul. What strengths or experience do you bring to serving on the Alpine School Board?
I've worked in education for 25 years. I know that different people in this room have different backgrounds. Some of you probably worked for a large corporation. My dad was a Geneva steelworker. He right here in our backyard right here is where my dad worked growing up. And I remember my dad as a steelworker complaining about upper management, some of the decisions of upper management and things that they do. And in the corporate world, a lot of times upper management's making decisions and they don't understand how it impacts the ground level. They don't understand how it impacts the kids in the classroom. And the 25 years of experience that I have in the classroom at the ground level provides a unique perspective of understanding how policies and procedures and how a lot of these decisions being made impact the classroom. We have legislatures that will pass laws and oftentimes with great intent, but don't understand the impact of what it does on the classroom level. And the same thing happens with boards, is decisions are being made that impact the classroom and they don't understand, how it's impacting the classroom. And so that ground level experience that I have, and not just teaching one subject, teaching multiple subjects, having that background, I think is invaluable. I mentioned in my introduction as well kind of the business background, and one of the things that I have always considered myself is I'm a problem solver, and I solve problems. And when I see a problem, I solve it. I'm involved in a sport that most of you probably have no clue what happens in that sport. I'm a wrestling guy, okay? And in the sport of wrestling, when I was growing up, we literally would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and we would go weigh in, you know, check our weight, and then we'd sit around and wait for them to organize the tournament. And then we'd be there till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And we would do this Saturday after Saturday after Saturday. And I came in and I said, you know what? We need to solve this problem. We need to appeal more to moms who are bringing their kids and taking their kids around in multiple sports. We've got to figure this out, or else we're going to lose participation in our sport. So I instituted a handful of changes in the sport, and when we instituted those changes, we saw our membership increasing in significant numbers. And I see a problem, and I work to solve that problem, and that's probably one of the strengths that I feel like is important. One of the things that's been a really tough frustration for me in education is it's fixing those problems. The bureaucracy, I mentioned the union, and a number of other things. So.
Anything that you didn't already cover? So 1 minute. Same question.
Cole mentioned bureaucracy. I want you to know that Alpine School District is the least heavy on top of just about any school district in Utah. We don't put a lot of money on the top because we want it to go into the classroom. I look at my experience in the last 4 years. I can tell you that the learning curve is steep. I've learned a lot. And one of the most poignant moments I've had was sitting in with a room with a large group of other school board members. And this was at the National School Boards Association. And it was announced that this was the largest gathering of elected officials in the world. And I just appreciated that training that I received and the experience.
Okay, you also have a minute to add anything you'd like to, based on your strengths or experience.
Alpine School District has the biggest discrepancy between administrators and teachers. Okay? And so to say that we are not top heavy, okay, I'm at that ground level. I have friends that have moved through the ranks from teacher to assistant principal to principal to district office. And when you get promoted to the district office, your life gets easy. Okay? And I'm telling you, our district office, do me a favor, go walk around there, go see what's going on. There is a lot of waste at our district office. So to claim that it's not top heavy, I'm sorry, it's the largest district in the state, and it's very top heavy, and it's the biggest difference between pay of administrators and teachers in the state.
Question number 4. Who is one local, don't have to worry about me, and one national politician that you believe represents your political ideology? What prominent views do you share? So one local and one national politician.
National politician, I'm gonna say that Mike Lee is a national politician when I see Cole Kelley signs with Mike Lee signs, I'm proud of that. And he's somebody that I think he's a constitutional conservative, and I value the Constitution. But I think the most important thing about Mike Lee is that he's a fiscal conservative, and he recognizes the importance of power at the local level, not at the federal level. So that he's a guy that's fighting against, our federal government growing bigger, and is fighting for states' rights and local control. And so Mike Lee is certainly somebody that on a national level I respect and admire. On the local level, and I hope that, I don't want to paint her into a corner anyway, but Sarah Beeson is a current member of the board, who I looked at Sarah Beeson, and one of the things that Sarah is doing right now that no other board member is doing is listening to both sides. She's willing to sit down with crazy conservative parents who have concerns about library policies. She's willing to sit down and listen to parents on both sides of that issue. And one of the things that I've really tried to do as I've ran my campaign is to sit down with not just with people who agree with me, but sit down with people who disagree with me and work to understand where they're coming from. And, you know, I've been able to go out and learn a lot about the struggles that people are having, and I pride myself on that. I think it's important to look at both sides of the issue and try to understand. I think it gives you a better perspective as you go through the decision-making process. So Sarah's one that I admire there, and I'm gonna mention a third one that I think, and I've had the opportunity to work with him quite a bit. But John Dougal is a leader, a political leader that I admire. Again, another fiscal conservative. I had the opportunity, I was actually Carson that was in the primaries with us, but Carson and I spent a summer working with John Dougal, and we conducted an audit of financial literacy in the class that both Carson and I teach, and look at the data and look at the strengths and the weaknesses of doing that. And I feel like John is somebody who's trying to look at the facts and make decisions on behalf of our kids that will most positively impact our kids. So those are three leaders that I really respect and admire. I guess I did a local, state, and national level.
One local, or if you want to do two, that's fine. And one national politician that you believe represents your political ideology.
Right. I have two on the national level that I admire. One is John Curtis. I've appreciated his outreach. I've attended his town halls and appreciated how he has reached across the aisle and is working to solve problems, and Utah problems. And I just appreciated his representation and feel like he is doing an honest job of representing our needs in Washington. I also am an admirer of Mitt Romney. I think he has exhibited more integrity and personal honesty than just about anybody on the Republican aisle. And I know that some of you are shaking your heads, and I'm sorry, that I believe he has stood for what is true and has been a principled leader. On the local level, I want to recognize a couple of people. First is the mayor here in Vineyard City, Julie Fulmer. I've appreciated getting to know her a little bit better and seeing the vision that she has for Vineyard has been very inspiring to me. And I just appreciated her outreach to me as a board member, and she's included me in some of the Vineyard happenings here that are going on. I also want to express my admiration for Astrid Tunis, the president of UVU University. I think she's done an outstanding job of expanding the reach of that university and making it a place that is really contributing to our community. And it's growing and expanding, and I just think that a lot of that is her genius, her inspiration, and her connection with students and with their community. Thank you.
Or would you like to add another politician or change your mind?
I'd like to respond to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney is one way in Massachusetts and another way in Utah. And another way of wording that, he is a pure definition of a politician. And says what he says, and whatever was going to get Mitt Romney elected to office, that is what Mitt Romney is going to do. That's what Mitt Romney is going to say. So I think that says a lot. And I'm somebody who, you mentioned the wrestling earlier, but I'm going to stand on principle. And I have, I mentioned some of the principles that are important to me. The Constitution is very important to me, and those are principles that I'm going to stand on. Fiscal conservatism is the principle that I want to stand on. And so, yeah, I think this creates a clear picture of the difference between the two candidates that we're dealing with.
Well, I just want you to observe what's happened here. This is a school board race. Both of us were required to raise our hand to the square at the county office and say that we would conduct a nonpartisan race. Injecting partisan politics into a school board race is not a productive thing. And
The question came from the moderator.
I'm just commenting. Bringing politics to the school board race is not a productive thing. I know that the politics is kind of built into some things, but when we blatantly call it out, I don't think that it's a productive thing for our schools. But Cole has been the Republican nominee, and he has accepted money from the Republican Party. So think about it.
Okay, that question came from parents or someone from the school, so there was no intent to politicize and make it partisan. I'm going to now, we have some questions submitted this evening, and we will start with Ada on this one. Parents are concerned about many books found on the school shelves containing pornographic material. Ada, why are you not fighting to get them off the shelves? And Cole, what would you do if you were on the board? And we'll give 2 minutes starting with Ada. Tell us about pornography books.
So Alpine School District takes this very seriously. The school library is an extension of the classroom, and those materials need to reflect the values of the community. So this summer, the Alpine School District conducted a procurement audit and went through all the libraries with a list from, I think it's Utah Parents United, and found all the books that were concerning. Of the books, that there were like 250, they found 52 books on the shelves, none in the elementary, and the others were in secondary and high school. They took those books, and we have now, we created a pilot policy, and we ran it through that pilot policy, one of the books. We have now, just 2 weeks ago, no, it'd be 3 weeks ago now, we finalized that policy, and there are now 26 review committees in process, reviewing the final 52 in a one-of-a-kind process. We are serious about keeping our standards high in our libraries, and those will be undergoing review. They are undergoing review right now. And those review committees are set up at each high school and junior high. So these are decisions that are being made by the community for the community. And that's, I think it's important that those decisions be made close to the community. And I guess one thing that I'd like to point out is that there were 2 letters from the Attorney General's office regarding this policy. In the first one, he said, If you enforce the bright line rule, which is contained in House Bill 374, he said, I will back you up. In the second letter, he said, if you want to be safe, put it in a procedure. And that is what Alpine School District did. We created our policy in consultation with the Attorney General's office. And so our process has the bright line rule, but it is wrapped up in a procedure that protects our policy, our rights, our constitutional rights to determine what is in our own schools. Thank you.
Parents are concerned about any books, obviously containing pornography. What would you do if you were on the board about this problem?
SB 374, there's a lot of individuals who are trying to frame this as a book burning movement. Okay, I mentioned I'm an English major, taught English for 10 years. This is not about Fahrenheit 451. Okay, this is not about To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, this is about books that contain pornographic materials. Okay, and the Attorney General was very strong in his wording and in what Ada mentioned, the bright line. It's very specific. So I brought with me one of those books, okay? And this book right here, okay, it has characters, and it introduces and it describes these characters the first time they are introduced, sitting down watching child pornography, okay? And it doesn't just tell you that these characters are watching child pornography, it describes for you what they are watching, and it is foul, okay? This book is in 2 libraries in Alpine School District right now, okay? High school students can check this book out and read about these characters watching child pornography, and very descriptive words describe child pornography in the book, okay? And so we're not talking about controversial subjects. We're talking about getting rid of books in our libraries that are pornographic. I'm for free speech. I think that people can say what they want, they can read what they want, they can produce what they want. But this is not about free speech. The reason we have rules, the reason we have laws, is to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And the most vulnerable in our society are our kids. And so by pushing these narratives into our school and with themes of child pornography, we're putting our kids at danger. This is not a free speech issue. This is an age-appropriate materials issue, and we need to make sure that the books that are in our libraries are age-appropriate books.
As a grandmother, I am not pushing porn into the libraries of our schools. Far from it. We have put in place a procedure for parents to have an input and to challenge any material that they find objectionable. What really concerns me is when we have a law that says these words: remove without review. Those words should concern you as they do me. Remove without review. The policy that we have in place is sound, and it is responsive to the community, and parents are the ones that get to determine which books are appropriate and which are not the legislature.
One of the important things about that policy is that it was recommended by our legislature that the review process be parent-heavy. that there be more parents represented on that review committee than school officials or school administrators. And Alpine School District policy does not do that. Alpine School District policy has more school officials represented on the review process than parents involved in that process. The other thing that I think is important to recognize is that you can only review one book every 45 days, so that creates a scenario where you can only review approximately 5 or 6 books a year. And yet, librarians are ordering lots of books, a lot more than 5 or 6 books a year. So there are significant holes in this policy to get these types of books out of our school. And the fact that this book is on 2 shelves is evidence of that.
Social emotional learning, SEL, and critical race theory, CRT, have become hot topics as of late. Does ASD teach SEL or CRT, and if so, in what way, and do you support or oppose the incorporation of these things into the ASD schools? Basically, SEL and critical race theory.
SEL and CRT, here's the careful balance that we have to be careful of. I recognize the importance of kids in our schools being emotionally stable. It's very hard for us to educate a child who is, and I before our meeting I had a chance to talk with the principal here, okay? And she described to me some of the struggles that she's having with kids that are being dragged in the middle of a divorce, you know, and how difficult that can be for those kids, and how that interrupts their education, you know, and how that can be something that they're dealing with, and so we do have to recognize that we have to address kids who are struggling with different things. Okay? That being said, it is not new for teenage kids to struggle with their emotions. And those of you that have raised teenagers, okay, you probably know that very, very well, right? The primary responsibility of dealing with that is the parent, not the schools. And the schools should be consulting the parents on how best to deal with their kids, not the schools telling the parent how they should be dealing with their kids. And I think that's an important thing we have to recognize, okay, is that it's the parent's responsibility first. Critical race theory is another one that was thrown in there, and I want to read you this quote. This is from Burgess Owens. Okay, I grew up attending separated schools in the Jim Crow South during a time when people were treated differently based on the color of their skin. Critical race theory preserves this way of thinking and undermines civil rights, constitutionally guaranteed equal protection before the law, and U.S. institutions at large. That's Burgess Owens, our representative in Utah, talking about critical race theory and the dangers of critical race theory as somebody who grew up in the Jim Crow South, right? And his experiences are valuable. And one of the things I think is important, I mentioned to you, I'm trying to sit down with people. I've talked with John Harvey, who is a black man who runs a podcast called the Modern Conservative. John's taught me a lot about his situation. I've sat down with Carrie Bartholomew and learned about her situation. She is a black woman that went through the foster care system, and I've learned a lot from these. And so I think it's important to learn from their experience.
First of all, I don't think my opponent has read Policy 6161, Sensitive Materials, because it explicitly says that the review committee must have more parents than administrators on the committee. That's part of the policy. It also is a part of the policy that I personally inserted is the ability of a school to have more than one review committee going at the same time. So there is really no limit to addressing the problems in a school. So I'm sorry that was not clear to you. If you want to read it, it's policy 6161, and it's very clear.
SEL and critical race theory. Thank you. Respond to those.
Just yesterday in committee, we discussed the use of state funds, the TSSA funds, Teacher Student Success Act funds. These are the funds that Alpine School District has been using to really shore up the student services that we offer in the way of counselors, behavioral specialists, social workers, all those that serve our students' needs. I think it's important that we realize that our students have lost one social year of development, and that is being reflected in our classrooms. And it's not just high school, it's in our elementary schools as well. And these service providers are doing a valiant work. The real challenge is to get ahead of the problem instead of reacting to the problem. We are trying desperately to help our teachers in the classrooms to have the instruction they need to do that tier 1 teaching I talked about what it means to develop socially. Absolutely, parents are the first line of authority in what their children need. But some parents, I am telling you, are desperate because they don't know how to address the needs of their children. I personally had a grandchild who entered first grade not knowing how to sit down through an entire class period. These are real and serious needs, and they are fulfilling a great need. And they are stretched thin, and we just hope that we can fund as many as they're needed.
Cole, you have 1 minute to add anything you'd like to say to our question about SEL or critical race theory.
I'm glad this got brought up because that 1 year that our kids got robbed, and I agree that my son was a senior during that year. He didn't get a homecoming. Okay? He didn't get to go to his homecoming dance. He didn't get a lot of no assemblies during my son's senior year. A lot of the things that kids love and enjoy about going to school. He didn't get those opportunities. And when parents like myself were speaking up and standing up and trying to express to our board that we want our kids to have these opportunities and please give our kids these opportunities, the board locked us out of their meeting and didn't allow us the opportunity to express to them that they were being robbed of these opportunities.
We're still on the SEL or critical race theory. You have 1 minute.
Alpine School District, open school. We return to learn. Unlike most of this nation, our schools were open. And I'm very proud of everything we did to make that happen. And I had a list here, but let's see if I can find it.
You only have a minute.
Sorry. Anyways, it's really hard for teachers to hear reactions like that. The measures that we took in order to keep schools open were necessary. And if we had not taken those measures, teachers would not have come, and families would not have sent their students to school. So I'm very proud of what we did. Our teachers on a dime created online content. What they did is heroic.
Please stay up there. Do you support the proposed Orem School District split? What are the pros? What are the cons? Should ASD be split? If so, under what conditions? And who would best determine how it's done and when?
Wow, that is a loaded question. On February 8th, when a friend of mine let me know that the Orem City Council was voting on a feasibility study, I was shocked. I was surprised. There was no indication that this was going to happen. There was no debate during the city council race, the mayoral race. Nobody mentioned this to my knowledge. So when they authorized the feasibility study, I sprung into action. I visited PTAs, I visited school community councils because people needed to be informed that this was happening. Nobody knew. It was a complete surprise to the community. That is not how this should have happened. I do not support an Orem school district, and I have a handout on my table in the back that outlines 10 different ways that Orem schools are supported, augmented in a special way by Alpine School District. That's because we are the most expensive city in Alpine School District to educate. Our students cost at least $1,000 more to educate in Orem than anywhere else. This is concerning. The other thing that's concerning is the lack of communication or collaboration about how our student services were going to be handled. And to me, this is the most egregious. We can't just go at this as if it's going to be okay. It's like jumping off a cliff with no parachute and taking our kids with us. To me, it was just unacceptable, this process, and so I did everything I could to alert others. I was instrumental in organizing a political issues committee called Stronger Together. I'm not a principal in that organization, but I did help create it because I feel strongly that our kids in Orem City deserve better. If there is going to be, there is going to be a discussion about this that needs to have everyone at the table that has interest. That includes parents with special ed needs. It includes our English language learning community. It includes our city officials. It includes administrators and teachers. We need to have all the right people at the table to have this conversation. Yes, I am open to this discussion, and I think, but the single city way to do it is not the best.
Cole, do you support the proposed Orem school district split? What are the pros and cons? Should ASD be split? If so, under what conditions? And who should best determine how it's done and when?
One of the things that I want to make clear is that I'm not running for or against Prop 2. I'm running for the Alpine Board of Education, and I'm running to represent the kids in the Mountain View cluster. That's what I'm running for. It is clear that that's what my campaign is about. My campaign is about the Alpine Board of Education and serving the students in this cluster. Okay? One of the things that I have done, and done a lot, is knock on doors. And I've knocked on hundreds of doors. And I've knocked on doors of people who are for, and I've knocked on doors of people who are against. And I would say 90% of those will say, yes, Alpine School District is too big. Okay? Yes, Alpine School District needs to be split. Okay? So whether you're a yes on this vote, or whether you're a no on this vote, Ada has burned her bridge. She is an absolute no on this vote. And no matter what happens, she is going to be a no on this vote. If the vote comes out yes, you're going to need a board member who can work with the city council to facilitate a new school district. If the vote comes out no, you want a board member who understands that the people want a split, but may not have liked how this split is moving forward. So you're going to want somebody on the board who is going to move forward with organizing a multi-city split. I would say 97 people, as I go out and I talk, hey, I'm a resident of, I grew up in Pleasant Grove. And Pleasant Grove, Linden, Vineyard, Orem, when I share that with people and say, would you like to see a multi-city split, they get very excited about that idea. And if a multi-city split is going to happen, you're going to need somebody that sees the value of a district split rather than preaching that Orem's getting so much from the district that we could never survive without Alpine School District. Alpine School District is too big. They admit they need to split, and you need a board member who's going to advocate for, whether it be a split now or a split later, a board member who sees the value of a smaller, local control district.
How convenient for my opponent to be on both sides of the fence. That is not leadership. This is serious. This is a generational decision. This will affect Orem City. Orem City is the one on the ballot, not a multi-city split. Orem City is on the ballot. There has never been a successful city split off and form its own school district, and that is because it is a bad idea. Every single city school district in the state of Utah, with the exception of Park City, struggles financially, and many of them have tried to join neighboring school districts unsuccessfully because their needs are so high. Orem, as a single city school district, it's a losing proposition, it's a jump off a cliff, it's a lack of leadership to be on the fence.
Okay, please, no, nothing from the audience, no bullying, please. Cole, you have 1 minute to respond for this split question.
I think that's great. I haven't burned down any bridges, and you're right, you do need a leader on this, okay? And if the vote comes out, yes, you need a leader. And if the vote comes out, you need a leader. And I am that leader. So for anybody to say, I'm afraid to stand on the issue, wow. I mean, that's the first time that's happened, okay? I'm not afraid to stand and be a leader. And no matter how this vote goes, I'm not running for Prop 2. I'm running to be your board member. And if the vote comes out, yes, I will be a leader. And if the vote comes out, no, I will be a leader on this issue. And that's what you're going to want as a board member. You don't want somebody, and my opponent said she is a rubber stamp for Alpine School District. She said that in our second debate. I am a rubber stamp for Alpine School District. And that's not leading, okay? That is doing whatever the district wants you to do. So yeah, she's carrying that banner for the district.
It goes along the lines of this. If Orem Prop 2 passes in November, how will you work with all constituents to ensure a smooth transition for all, but especially for students? And Cole, we'll start with you on this one. If Orem Prop 2 passes in November, how will you work with all constituents to ensure a smooth transition for all, but especially students?
One of the things that I do want to address in this is the teachers and the administrators of Alpine School District. I know there's a lot of opposition from teachers to this proposition, okay? And the teachers out there are scared and they're fearful of what may happen with this change, okay? And one of the things, it's funny to me that you can get up here and you can accuse me of being anti-teachers or against the teachers. I'm a teacher, okay? And I'm advocating for teachers. Just because I have different ideas than you about how I think teachers can be helped doesn't mean that I'm against teachers, okay? I love this profession. I love my peers in this profession. And the school teachers have concerns, but part of the problem is that
they're being fear-mongering. There's a lot of information that is being disseminated that is inaccurate information. I went to all 3 of the feasibility study meetings that the city council held, and I think probably 10 times the question about their pension plans was submitted. Am I going to lose my pension plan? Am I going to lose my pension plan? And that's just misinformation. No, teachers are not going to lose their pension plan. It is a state pension plan, and no matter what school district they work for, they will continue to have their pension plan. So the misinformation campaign that is out there, so one of the bridges that I definitely recognize is going to have to be built and repaired is with the teachers. And I want the teachers out there to know that I support you, that you can have confidence in me, that I'm going to look out for your best interest. If it's a yes vote, I will look out for you, school teachers. If it's a no vote, I will continue to look out for you, school teachers. Okay? But I think this is the important thing that we have to recognize here is that if it comes out as a no, we're still going to have to work with the Orem City Council. We're still going to have to work with the mayor and the city council of Vineyard and the other municipalities, Linden, Pleasant Grove potentially, and there's been a lot of bridges burned. Debbie tonight is a city council member who voted against this being on the ballot, and I have no problem tonight with Debbie conducting this debate because I haven't burned that bridge with Debbie, and I know that I can reach across, and though we may have a difference of opinion, we can work together. And so I think it's important to recognize that, I'm not going to burn those bridges down. True leadership is when you stand up and say, we're going to make this work no matter how that vote comes out.
One policy passes in November, how we work with all constituents to ensure a smooth transition for all, but especially the students. 2 minutes.
My opponent may be a teacher, but he is not a teacher in Orem City. The teachers in Orem City understand that this impacts not just them. They are fearful for their students. They understand the many ways that Alpine School District augments the schools in Orem City. The first way is just operationally. They are more expensive. Without backup from Orem City, from Alpine School District, they would not be able to offer a full curriculum in our high schools. Our teachers are concerned because they look at Jordan Canyons, the split that occurred there, and they know their colleagues had their wages frozen for at least 3 years. They look to Provo School District, and they see a school district as similar to ours as it could be. Only we're in a worse position because we have 3 high schools, they have 2. We have 3 junior highs, they have 2. They cannot hire teachers fast enough because they leave to go to Alpine School District, to go to Nebo School District, to go to Granite School District. This is true. You ask any teacher in Provo School District, they have a hard time hiring because they can't afford the wages. They had a tax increase this past year because this very problem. They had a higher tax rate than we did originally, and they increased it by 27% with this last tax season. As far as building bridges, I am happy to work with anyone for the benefit of our students. But we are not going to let this happen. We are not going to let this happen because it is not good for our students. It's not good for our families. It's not good for our taxpayers. It's not good for our teachers. And we are not going to let this happen.
You missed the question.
Answer the question.
How am I going to, if it
passes, how will you work with constituents to ensure a smooth transition for all, if it passes?
That's my answer. It's not going to pass.
It's our decision.
You have a minute to respond. I guess you can talk about futures, but the question really is, How will you work with your constituents to ensure a smooth transition for all, especially the kids?
Yeah, the fear mongering there is apparent. I hope you see fear mongering, right? And you wonder why teachers are scared. Yeah, that's why they're scared. Okay? I think it's a mistake to compare to Provo School District. Provo School District has been mismanaged in many, many ways. I have many friends who have come from Provo School District, and the dysfunction there has been significant, and from the top down. And so I think that's a poor comparison. There are others that would be much better comparisons. There's several single city school districts throughout Utah. And I think it's important to look at those. But this is about local control. The city council didn't vote to create a new district. The city council voted to let the people decide, and you get to make that decision.
Do you think Common Core is bad or good for education? How closely aligned to Common Core is the current Utah Core Math and English? Are you in favor of keeping what we currently have for math standards?
Well,
We're going to talk about education. Wow.
Actually, these are questions that were submitted by
Yes.
and so I think all these questions are valuable, so I'm just going to say that.
Okay, I do need to correct several things. My opponent claimed that I said that I was a rubber stamp for the Alpine School District. I said the exact opposite of that and gave several examples of times when I was not a rubber stamp. He claimed, as the DEC study also claims, that Alpine School District has the biggest discrepancy between administrators and teachers. They conveniently left out every school district that exceeded ours. And you have to realize that administrators are paid more because they work year-round, and they also have advanced degrees. And I forgot the question.
The question is, do you think Common Core is bad or good for education? How closely aligned to Common Core is the current Utah Core Math and English?
Yeah, you need to understand that the curriculum is set in Utah by people in Utah. Every 6 years, every subject is reviewed and thoroughly by a review committee that includes parents and teachers. And when you say Common Core, this is something that happened years ago. And sure, some of the content will be the same, but this is content that is vetted and set by people in Utah, educators, parents, and it happens every 6 years. If you want to be on a review committee, you can sign up and participate as well.
Cole, do you need the question again?
Yes.
Do you think Common Core is bad or good for education? How closely aligned to Common Core is the current Utah Core Math and English? Are you in favor of keeping what we currently have for math standards?
I think Utah is a great state in terms of recognizing the importance of local control. What I think is important to recognize is the push for national organizations to push a curriculum onto the states and push a curriculum into the local schools. And that's what you've got to recognize as what's going on. So when my opponent stands up and says that I was trained by the National School Board Association, that's a national organization that's pushing an agenda about how we should be doing it in Utah. When she talks about how she's grateful that we have just one teachers organization, the NEA, the teachers union, that exclusively represents teachers in our school district, that she supports that as well. And so when you look at the influence of national organizations and the curriculum from these national organizations feeding into our schools,
when you align with these national organizations, you're going to find that that is problematic. This is partly how some of these books are ending up in our library. There are national organizations that endorse or put their stamp on these books and say, this is a great book, this is a book you should have in your library. They don't align with our values and our culture here in Utah and in Alpine School District. So to not recognize the influence of these national organizations that are pushing a common core curriculum and recognizing that some of these are seeping into our schools, we've got to recognize that we've got to rid our curriculum of these types of things. In Alpine School District, we do a diversity training program called REACH, okay? And it's a training program, and I talked with somebody who conducted the REACH training, who was very schooled in critical race theory, and when he trained his teachers in the REACH program in Alpine School District, the teachers that I talked to who were trained by him felt like it was a very productive program. I talked to a different teacher who was trained by somebody different in the REACH program, and when he described it, he felt like there was a narrative that was being pushed that was critical race theory. These are both individuals who have a very knowledgeable background on what critical race theory is, and so to pretend like it isn't happening at all in our schools is to ignore the facts. We've got to recognize that it's there, and we've got to make sure that we keep it out of our schools at the local level.
Common Core, we're still on the Common Core. 1 minute on Common Core.
I did want to respond to the critical race theory topic. I think that any teacher in Alpine School District would never be guilty of shaming a student for the color of their skin, or allowing them or making them feel guilty for events that occurred in the past. And those are the two things in the state legislation that came through. These are the two things that they objected to, and I don't know of any Alpine School District teacher who would inflict that on their students. As far as Common Core, the school board is obligated by law to teach the curriculum as set on the state level. That we don't determine that. We determine what materials we use to teach that curriculum, but we are obligated by law to teach the curriculum.
Nicole, you have 1 minute to respond about Common Core or anything else you want to talk about.
I think that Ada missed the viral video from the Lehigh teacher that described exactly what she's saying. No teacher in Alpine School District has ever done this, right? And yet we saw it done, and we not only saw it done, but we could tell that she had done it many, many times before and gotten away with it, because you can't do anything to me. The only reason that teacher got fired is because the video went viral. Okay? There are other teachers, and it is the minority, but there are other teachers pushing an agenda in our schools. So to pretend like it's not happening, and there is no teacher in Alpine School District pushing that agenda, I disagree. There are teachers pushing that agenda, and we need to identify who they are, and we need to make sure that we hold them accountable.
And then we're going to give 3 minutes to each of you to kind of give a summation of why people should vote for you or anything you want to talk about in your summary. Okay, my last question is, what is your criteria for a tax increase or a bond? And Nicole, we'll start with you. What is your criteria for a tax increase or a bond?
I mentioned earlier that I'm a fiscal conservative, and I think that it's important to be very responsible with the money of our taxpayers. I also recognize that I was at a cottage meeting last night where a gentleman conducting the cottage meeting said if I ran for public office, I would run on give teachers a raise and you pay more taxes, and that would be my campaign slogan.
And he says, that's why I'll probably never get elected, right? We have to invest in education. Okay? In Utah, we spend the least amount of money per student than any state in the country. And in Alpine School District, we have to be willing to invest in our kids. The struggle is, how are we spending that money? Okay, so to pretend like our administrators, that we're not top heavy in Alpine School District, that there's not waste, that there's not fat at the district level. There's a lot of fat that we could get rid of that we could then allocate to the classroom, to the student, to the teachers in that classroom. And so we've got to learn first to responsibly spend the taxpayers' dollars. And then once we learn to responsibly spend the taxpayers' dollars, I think that our citizens would be more willing to invest more money in the education of our kids. We're focusing on facilities, we're focusing on a lot of things that don't matter. We've got beautiful schools, and I think recognizing and understanding that having a good learning environment, having a classroom that is upkept, that's nice, that provides a good environment is important for students. But we've got to invest the money at the ground level, where the teachers are at and where the students are at. And once we do that, I think the taxpayers are more than willing to come to the table and say, yeah, let's give more to the education of our children.
What is your criteria for a tax increase or a bond? Or what was your criteria?
The Alpine Board of Education has two main goals. The first is to hire and retain excellent teachers. And the second is to reduce class size and distribute resources as equitably as possible. In order to do those two things, it requires an investment. And we, just this past year, reached a pivotal goal that we've been striving for a long time, and that is to have an entry-level position pay, teacher's pay at $50,000 annual salary. That is a significant advance. It wasn't that many years ago that it was $35,000. As a board, we have made progress in that area. And we have invited the public to contribute and to invest with us. Over the past, as you know, Alpine School District, or maybe you don't know, we typically bond every 4 years. And we did not bond in the year 2020 because we surveyed our constituents and they said, tighten your belt and don't do it this year. At that point, we didn't know if the economy was going up or going down. And so we delayed that bond. This year, in 2022, we are looking at 6 years of growth. We are looking at 7 elementary schools who are at or above 1,000 students. And one of them, I know for certain, Thunder Ridge, is the size of our junior highs. This is not acceptable to me as a board member. It is absolutely necessary that we ameliorate that situation. It is also absolutely necessary that we address aging buildings in the mature side of the Alpine School District. We are doing this aggressively. No district has more aggressively attacked aging buildings more than Alpine School District. We maintain our buildings, and when the time comes that they need to be replaced, we rebuild. And that has happened. We have built, I think it's 7 new schools in the city of Orem. I personally advocated for the city of Vineyard to get trailside. Without my advocacy, it could have been built in Dry Creek or in Eagle Mountain. But we did the right thing. We advocated, we got the community support that we needed, and we built here.
Cole, you have a minute to respond about tax increase criteria.
I'm glad that you brought up the bond. This is a $595 million bond. I'm not against bonds. I'm not against the capital projects for our students. But there is one cluster in Alpine School District that is getting $0 from that $595 million bond, and it is the Mountain View cluster. There are no improvements to Orem Junior High. There are no improvements to Lake Ridge Junior High. There are no improvements to the elementary schools in our area. This is the only cluster that in a $595 million bond is going to see $0 from that bond. Who's advocating for the students in the Mountain View cluster? Because we are getting $0 from this bond.
Add any sort of discussion on the criteria for bond increases.
There are only 2 schools left in the city of Orem with seismic issues, 2 elementaries, thank you. And this bond addresses those. There's a seismic merger build, and that's the critical need that I see. To me, that's a critical need. Orem Junior has been rebuilt, all except the auditorium. That does need to be addressed. But the more critical needs that we address through the bond, the more money is left in the capital fund. Because Alpine School District is a growing district, we get state funds for that growth in the capital fund. So the more that we do on the bond, the more capital funds will be available, and we can address other projects, for example, the auditorium in the Orem Junior. There are other critical needs in Lake Ridge. These are the things that we address in the capital fund.
Thank you very much. This ends the question part of our debate. We're now going to give, I think we started with Ada at the beginning, so we'll start with Cole. You have 3 minutes to summarize anything you want to talk about and maybe tell the people why they would like to vote for you.
This is my first time running for public office. I've learned a lot through the process. And one of the things that I've enjoyed the most, as I mentioned, is going out, knocking on doors, talking to people. I've got a couple individuals in this room right here that have gone out and knocked doors with me. A few that I see, and I appreciate their support, and I appreciate their willingness to come out. I consider my campaign a truly grassroots campaign. I want to get out. I want to talk with individuals. I want to hear their concerns, and I want to address their concerns. In Alpine School District right now, one of the concerns is the size of Alpine School District. As I mentioned, even those that are saying no, we don't like how this is happening, I'm going to vote no on Prop 2, they're concerned about the size of Alpine School District. We don't want to become Clark County School District in Las Vegas that is just, run down with bureaucracy. As our community is growing, and we know that. And I think it's important to elect a board member who is going to fight for the needs of the students in this area, in this cluster. And as a representative of the board, my first priority is to the constituents that voted me into office, and I will look out for those kids and look out for those schools and listen to the needs of the parents in that area. So I would encourage you when you go, I guess we don't always go out anymore, but when you vote, I would encourage you to mark my name on that ballot, because I think I'm somebody who is going to push for the needs of the students in this area, and I think I'm the best person to represent your students in the Mountain View cluster. Thank you.
Early in my service on the board, there was an occasion in which the board meeting had ended, and I had the opportunity to visit with people in the audience. One of those audience members was a foreign exchange student who was attending UVU. And she was attending the first board meeting that she'd ever seen in her life. She was attending the first democratic process that she had seen in her life. And it was just a joy to explain to her how I was elected and how I had a duty to represent the people that voted for me in the governance of our schools. We have a wonderful opportunity to, as we take this opportunity to own our schools. They belong to us, we paid for them, that our children attend, and we have the right to determine what happens in them. I believe in building schools together through community engagement and through building relationships of trust. That means trust between parent and teacher, and also trust between the community and the school. I feel like I represent that trust. I will insist on transparency. I will insist on collaborative processes. I will insist on bringing everybody to the table when we talk about the future of Orem and Vineyard schools. I think we owe it to our public to be truthful, to act, not acting in deception. And I feel like I have represented that. Our teachers every year sign off on what they call a code of conduct. And in that code of conduct, they agree that their classrooms are like public spaces. And I just want to assure you that they honor that code, and that if there's any infraction of that, I, as a board member, need to know about it. Let's build our schools together through trust and community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you to all the attendants, especially these candidates. This is not an easy process, and I commend both of you for putting your hat in the race. And if you don't have good people, you get what you get, right? These are both very good people. We have the building until 9 o'clock. They have executive tables at the back of the room. I'm sure each will be happy to talk to you individually, at least in the next 22 minutes. And feel free to ask questions. Once again, thank you for your participation. Thank you for coming. And please turn in your ballots so that we know what you really would like as far as the school district.
Thank you, Debbie.
Great, how you doing? Good to see you.
Had a few people on?
Yeah, quite a few. Like 100-something comments, so. I put it in the Orem forward page, and there's a bunch of people in there.
Sweet.
How you doing? Are you in the district?
I work on person.
Cool.
After 2:30 p.m. social media.
Hi there. Hey, Anita.
decided. I can't always go. Yeah, but only three can be there at a time, so we rotate.
Adam.
Adam,
Yeah. Somebody on the live stream asked a question for you. They said,
are you filming?
yes. Oh, well, it's live. I'm trying to read their live comment. They said, will you please ask Ada if she feels that a member of the board should be censured for speaking for the board without consent? I have no idea what that means. So.
If they're referring to me, I
They're saying,
don't know that I've ever spoken for the board without their consent.
okay. Yeah, it said,
There is
please ask Ada if she feels that a member of the board should be censured for speaking on behalf of the board without consent.
Yeah, there is a law that's in the books, Utah Code, that says your membership on a board does not infringe upon your right to represent the people in your area. So if that's a problem with somebody, because I am actively advocating in the Prop 2 question, that I'm doing it as a representative of the schools and the parents and the people that voted for me in my area.
Gotcha.
And I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, and I've never claimed to be speaking on behalf of the board.
Thanks for taking the time. See you.
Any other questions?
That was the only one I had. So, yeah.
That's a divide there.